Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a hard question. Why are you tired, overwhelmed, and still not where you want to be? I'll tell you why. Because you're saying yes when your soul is screaming no. You're drowning in distractions, buried under obligations that are not to do with your destiny. But today, Toda, we flip the script. This isn't just about saying no. It's about saying hell to your purpose, your time, and your legacy. The most successful people on earth guard their focus like lions guard their territory. So if you're ready to stop being busy and start being powerful, join me as we master the art of saying no. Your Phase 1 weapon to boost productivity, reclaim your time, and ekicha EV more than you ever thought possible. Let's start with a fundamental truth. Every yes you give is a trade. When you agree to something, whether it's a request, an obligation, or even an opportunity, you are exchanging a piece of your most finite resource, time. And time is not just currency, it's the raw material of your life. So when you say yes to things that don't align with your purpose, you're not just being polite, you're making a withdrawal from your future self. Now think about this psychologically. Why do so many of us struggle to say no? Because we're wired for social harmony. We fear conflict, rejection, or being perceived as selfish. But here's the paradox: by saying no to the wrong things, you're actually saying yes to the right ones, to your mission, your growth, your highest potential. And that's not selfish, it's necessary. Look at it philosophically. Nietzsche said, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you don't define your boundaries, the world will define them for you. Every yes you give to something trivial is a no to something extraordinary. Every time you agree to a task that drains you, you're stealing energy from the work that could actually move you forward. And this isn't just abstract wisdom, it's neurological. Your brain has limited bandwidth for decision making and focus. When you clutter it with unnecessary obligations, you dilute your ability to excel where it truly matters. That's why the most successful people aren't just disciplined, they're ruthlessly selective. They understand that no is the filter that separates the meaningful from the meaningless. So ask yourself, what am I saying yes to right now that's holding me back? What relationships, tasks, or habits are consuming time that should belong to your destiny? Because here's the hard truth. If you don't choose where to draw the line, life will draw it for you. And you won't like where it ends up. Start treating no, not as rejection, but as redirection, the steering wheel of your life. Because when you master this, you don't just gain time, you reclaim your future. And that's where real power begins. Consider this: when you say yes to everything, you're not being generous, you're being indiscriminate. And indiscriminate action is a recipe for mediocrity. Psychologically, this is rooted in a deep-seated fear. The fear of missing out, the fear of disappointing others, or worse, the fear of confronting the fact that you might not actually know what's worth your time. But here's the brutal reality: if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And when that happens, you'll find yourself exhausted, stretched thin, and nowhere near where you wanted to be. Let's break this down. Every yes carries a hidden cost, what economists call an opportunity cost. When you agree to attend that unnecessary meeting, when you take on that extra project out of guilt, when you sacrifice your focus to please others, you're not just giving up time. You're giving up the chance to invest that time into something that could actually move the needle in your life. And over time, those small compromises accumulate into a massive deficit, a life half lived potential untapped. Neurologically, this is a disaster. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision making and focus, has limited resources. When you overload it with trivial demands, you're essentially cognitive debt. You're borrowing attention from tomorrow, and the interest rate is exhaustion. That's why chronic yes, people often feel like they're running on empty, because they are. They've traded depth for breadth, mastery for distraction. Philosophically, this is a failure of self-respect. The ancient Stoics understood this well. If you don't value your own time, no one else will. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you're always available, always accommodating, you're signaling that your time is cheap. And when you do that, you invite more demands, more interruptions, more of everything except what actually matters. So ask yourself, what am I avoiding by saying yes to everything? Is it the discomfort of setting boundaries? The fear of being seen as selfish? Or worse, the terrifying possibility that beneath all the business, you might not have a clear direction at all? Because here's the truth: burnout isn't just about doing too much. It's about doing too much of the wrong things. The antidote isn't time management, it's identity management. You have to decide ruthlessly what you're willing to sacrifice for and what you're not. Because when you do, something remarkable happens: your energy returns, your focus sharpens. And for the first time, you start moving towards something instead of just running from everything. Here's something you might not want to hear: most of what you're doing doesn't matter. Not really. Oh, it might feel urgent in the moment. That email that needs an immediate response, that favor for a colleague, that social obligation you feel pressured to attend. But urgency is not the same as importance. And if you don't learn to distinguish between the two, you'll spend your life putting out fires while your dreams burn to the ground. This is fundamentally a problem of vision. Without a clear sense of what you're working toward, without a mission that grips you at the level of your identity, you become a ship without a rudder, drifting wherever the current of other people's demands takes you. Psychologically, this is why so many people feel lost even when they're busy. Activity without purpose is the fastest path to existential fatigue. The ancient Greeks had a word for this, akrasia, the state of acting against one's better judgment. It's what happens when you know what you should be doing, but you keep saying yes to what's easy instead. Now, let's get practical. Your brain is wired to prioritize immediate rewards over long-term gains. That's just human nature. But here's the catch: every time you surrender to that impulse, every time you choose the path of least resistance, you're strengthening neural pathways that make it harder to say no next time. You're literally training yourself to be distracted. This is why clarity isn't just helpful, it's protective. When you know with absolute certainty what your mission is, when you've defined what success looks like for you, not for your boss, your family, or society, suddenly the noise falls away. The trivial becomes obvious. And no stops feeling like a rejection and starts feeling like an affirmation of something greater. But here's where most people fail. They mistake having a goal for being defined by a goal. That's insufficient. Your mission can't just be something you want. It has to be something you are. It needs to be so deeply ingrained that saying no to distractions becomes instinctive, not just intellectual. This is what separates professionals from amateurs, the truly successful from the perpetually busy. So ask yourself, what is my mission? Not in the vague New Age sense, but in the concrete blood and bone sense. What is the hill you're willing to die on? Because until you can answer that, until you can articulate what you're willing to sacrifice for, you'll never have the clarity to know what to sacrifice, period. Let's address the elephant in the room. Saying no feels uncomfortable because we're social creatures hardwired for connection. Our brains interpret potential conflict or disapproval as a threat. That's why your palms sweat when you consider turning down a request, even from someone you'll never see again. But here's what we must understand: the ability to set boundaries isn't just a productivity hack, it's a fundamental requirement for psychological integrity. The modern world has this backwards. We've been conditioned to believe that being agreeable is virtuous, that accommodation equals kindness. But that's a dangerous oversimplification. True responsibility to yourself and others requires discernment. When you say yes to everything, you're not being generous, you're being irresponsible with your limited resources. The philosopher Epictetus understood this when he said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, the path to growth requires tolerating temporary discomfort for long-term gain. So how do we implement this? First, recognize that no isn't inherently rude. It's your delivery that determines its impact. Psychological research shows that people respect boundaries more when they're presented with clarity rather than apology. Instead of, I'm so sorry, I don't think I can try. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I need to focus on existing commitments right now. This isn't just semantics, it's neurological programming. When you frame your refusal around your values rather than your limitations, you reinforce your brain's association between boundary setting and self-respect. Here's the deeper truth: we avoid guilt isn't the price of saying no. It's the tax on an unclear conscience. If you feel guilty setting boundaries, it likely means you haven't fully internalized your right to have them. That's why children can say no with such ease. They haven't yet learned to doubt their own sovereignty. As adults, we must reclaim that unapologetic self-knowledge, not through selfishness, but through the recognition that our highest contributions require focused energy. Practice this next time you're asked to divert from your priorities. Pause. Ask yourself, would I expect this person to abandon their core responsibilities to do what I'm about to do for them? The answer is almost certainly no. That cognitive shift from obligation to mutual respect is where true assertiveness begins. Remember, every great oak was once a sapling that refused to be trampled. Your no isn't rejection, it's the roots of your future strength. Consider this paradox: the most generous people you know are often the ones most comfortable saying no. Why? Because they understand a fundamental truth about energy management. Every no you utter today creates space for a more meaningful yes tomorrow. This isn't just time management, it's energy economics. When you stop scattering your attention across trivial demands, you accumulate what psychologists call cognitive capital, the mental resources needed for breakthrough thinking and genuine connection. There's a neurological basis for this phenomenon. Your brain operates on what's called decision fatigue. The more choices you make in a day, the poorer your decisions become. This is why Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day. He was preserving decision-making energy for what truly mattered. But here's what most people miss. Every yes you give to something unimportant isn't just costing you that time. It's degrading the quality of all your subsequent choices. When you say no to the trivial, you're not being restrictive, you're being strategic. You're creating the conditions for excellence to emerge. This principle extends beyond productivity into relationships. Think about the people you respect most. Chances are they have clear boundaries. There's a psychological reason for this. Boundaries don't push people away. They establish the framework for authentic connection. When you're constantly overcommitted, you show up distracted, half-present, and resentful. But when you protect your focus, your yes becomes powerful. Your presence becomes a gift rather than an obligation. The Stoics understood this well when they taught the principle of sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things. Every choice ripples through your entire ecosystem. When you say no to a late night email check, you're saying yes to morning clarity. When you decline a superficial networking event, you create space for a deep conversation that could change your trajectory. This isn't speculation, it's observable reality. The people who achieve extraordinary results aren't those who do more. They're those who've learned to protect what matters from what doesn't. So here's your challenge for 1 week. Track not just what you say yes to, but what those yeses cost you in hidden no's. That committee position, it might be costing you family time. That extra project, it might be robbing you of creative energy. The math always reveals itself. What you tolerate, you can't transform. The most powerful yes of your life begins with a single strategic no. Start wielding it today. There comes a moment in every successful person's journey when they make a profound discovery. Productivity isn't about doing more. It's about doing less better. This is the hidden power behind mastering the art of no. When you begin eliminating the non-essential, something remarkable happens. Your remaining commitments receive exponential returns on investment. It's not magic, it's simple mathematics of attention. The same amount of effort applied to fewer targets produces extraordinary results. Psychologically, this transformation occurs because our brains aren't designed for constant multitasking. Neuroscience reveals that what we call multitasking is actually rapid task switching, and each switch carries a cognitive cost, what researchers call the attention residue effect. When you say no to unnecessary tasks, you're not just freeing up time, you're preserving the quality of your focus for what remains. Think of it like this: a laser isn't powerful because the light is intense, but because it's concentrated. The same principle applies to your efforts. Philosophically, this touches on an ancient wisdom, the concept of via negativa, the path of improvement through subtraction. Sometimes the most powerful way forward isn't adding new strategies or tools, but systematically removing everything that isn't serving your purpose. Michelangelo didn't create David by adding marble to a block. He chipped away everything that wasn't David. Your ideal productivity operates on the same principle. It emerges when you eliminate all that isn't essential. But here's where most people stumble. They mistake business for progress. They wear their overcommitment like a badge of honor, not realizing it's actually a sign of indiscipline. True productivity operates differently. It looks like Warren Buffett's 25-5 rules, focusing intensely on just 5 critical priorities, or like Einstein refusing prestigious administrative positions to protect his thinking time. These weren't acts of selfishness. They were acts of profound respect for their unique contributions to the world. The practical implementation is straightforward but challenging. Conduct a ruthless audit of your current commitments. For each one, ask, if I weren't already doing this, would I start it today? The uncomfortable answers will reveal where your no's need to be applied. Then observe what happens. You'll find the important work doesn't just get done, it gets done better with less stress and often in less time. Here's your ultimate test 1 year from today. You won't regret the request you declined, but you'll profoundly regret the priorities you abandoned by saying ayes too often. Choose now which future you prefer. So here we arrive at the fundamental truth. Mastering the art of saying no isn't about rejection, it's about resurrection. Resurrection of your time, your focus, and ultimately your potential. Every no you courageously utter is, in reality, a yes to the life you were meant to live, one of purpose, impact, and uncompromised excellence. You've seen the cost of overcommitment, diluted effort, chronic exhaustion, and the quiet tragedy of unmet potential. But you've also discovered the antidote: clarity that fuels conviction, boundaries that build respect, and the disciplined focus that transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results. This isn't just about productivity, it's about philosophy. The ancient Stoics, modern neuroscientists, and history's greatest achievers all agree what you refuse defines you as much as what you embrace. So starting today, stop apologizing for protecting your priorities. When you say no to the trivial many, you say yes to the vital few. And in that choice, you'll find something remarkable. Not just increased achievement, but increased meaning. The world will try to distract you. Don't let it. Your legacy is waiting on the other side of your next courageous no. Go claim it.